with the power grid and
Mr. President, I
rebuilding it. So let's take a listen.
And First Lady Jill Biden to Puerto Rico. We're honored to have you here. The people of Puerto Rico are very grateful for your steadfast support, and particularly as we recover from Hurricane Fiona. I must highlight that this visit is not an isolated incident. It is yet another example of your commitment to the well-being of the American citizens of Puerto Rico, which you, Mr. President, and your administration have demonstrated with concrete actions for the past 19 months. That support has included total collaboration from cabinet members in key federal agencies, as well as targeted initiatives in important policy areas such as education, renewable energy, and economic development. Now, in Puerto Rico's time of need, the Biden administration has been working closely with us since before the hurricane hit us. As I have mentioned to the President, FEMA's collaboration has been instrumental to our island's reconstruction efforts, and that has helped put our people in Puerto Rico back on their feet. My team and I provided the President and his staff with a detailed briefing of where we are with respect to the recovery from Hurricane Fiona, and described the challenges and opportunities on which we must work together. This is crucial in order to be able to efficiently provide our residents equitable access to essential services and achieve the resiliency in our infrastructure that we need. To that end, I have made a request to President Biden to amend the major disaster declaration to provide an additional period of 180 days of 100% funding for debris removal, emergency protective measures, and direct federal assistance. Right now, Puerto Rico is in a full recovery mode. Just 2 weeks after Fiona, 93% of Puerto Ricans have electricity and 98% have water service. We have been able to provide safe passage to all communities whose access roads or bridges were affected. And everyone who was housed in a shelter has either returned to their home or has been provided temporary housing. All 78 Puerto Rican municipalities were included in the major disaster declaration, and more than 800,000 residents of Puerto Rico have registered with FEMA to claim individual assistance. Our efforts to combat poverty are especially important after a disaster like Hurricane Fiona, in which so many vulnerable families lost their homes and belongings. Thus, I have asked FEMA to provide immediate access to the supplies in its local warehouses to our government and the 94 local non-governmental organizations operating community hubs on our island. On the other hand, we must leverage the recent advances we have made in the ongoing reconstruction due to Hurricane Maria 5 years ago. So it is crucial that all projects stemming from the impact of Hurricane Fiona be incorporated in our previous projects in a cohesive and strategic manner. In addition, since so much of the damage by Fiona's flooding was on our transportation infrastructure, we have requested that FEMA treat the reconstruction of our roads and bridges as critical infrastructure in its recovery policy. We also talked about additional ways in which the federal government can assist us in advancing the transformation of our electric system and achieving our renewable energy generation goals by 2050. Consistent with the Memorandum of Understanding we signed last February with key federal agencies. This initiative will help us promote microgrids and distributed energy in remote areas, improve our power sector resiliency, and increase access to more affordable energy and cleaner air. Finally, we spoke of the need to prioritize U.S. Army Corps of Engineers flood control projects to mitigate further damages from potential additional storms. The Corps' ongoing or potential projects cover areas that suffered damages during Hurricane Fiona, such as the areas surrounding Rio La Plata, Rio Puerto Nuevo, Rio Grande de Arecibo, Rio Nigua, Rio Guanajibo, and Rio Inabon here in Ponce. Other areas we must prioritize are aid to our farmers, climate change mitigation initiatives like coastal erosion and coral restoration projects, and adequate funding for our healthcare programs. In short, my asks to you, Mr. President, are straightforward. We want to be treated in the same way as our fellow Americans in the States in times of need. All American citizens, regardless of where they live in the United States, should receive the same support from the federal government. We're confident that the President will heed our call for equal treatment because that is consistent with his priorities and his policies. Again, I want to thank President Biden and the First Lady for their visit and for his administration's support for Puerto Rico's recovery. Thank you.
Le brindo la más calurosa bienvenida y agradezco la visita del presidente y la primera dama al pueblo de Ponce, al cual pertenezco y donde he vivido toda mi vida. Me presento, mi nombre es Maritzaida Pacheco Cosme y trabajo en los centros Sorisolina Ferre, en la playa de Ponce. Los centros fueron fundados por Sorisolina Ferre, una mujer misionera cuyo legado fue de amor y servicio, el cual nosotros tratamos de honrar con nuestro trabajo y dedicación. Nuestras comunidades y Puerto Rico atravesaron un sinfín de atropellos. María fue devastador. Quisimos renacer. Luego de eso fuimos atropellados por temblores, pandemias y recientemente el huracán Fiona. No hemos podido recuperarnos del todo. María fue horrible, perdimos algunos incluso.
We're hearing now from a representative of the center Sorisolina Ferre, which provides different kinds of assistance to communities and families in Ponce, in the south of the island, the area that was devastated by Hurricane Fiona. But also this representative is talking about the impact of the earthquakes that had also hit the area and from which people are still trying to recover. We just heard Pedro Pierluisi, the governor of Puerto Rico, asking President Biden for equality and equity in Puerto Rico and announcing some of the intended destination of the funding that is coming from the federal government, also giving a bit of an update about the situation with power, where 93% of the island's residents, according to the governor, now have power. The question is whether that power is staying or if it's coming and going as it has been even before Fiona. He also said people have 98% of the homes in Puerto Rico have access to water. This representative from El Centro Sorisolina Ferre is thanking the president for his visit and saying it is an honor for her to introduce the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Let's listen to him.
I would like to extend our warmest welcome and express our appreciation to the President and the First Lady for their visit to the municipality of Ponce, which is where I am from and where I have lived my entire life. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Maritzaida Pacheco Cosme, and I work at Centro Sorisolina Ferre, located in La Playa de Ponce. The centers were founded by Sister Isolina Ferre, a missionary woman whose legacy of love and service we try to honor with our work and dedication. Our communities and Puerto Rico have experienced countless hardships. Hurricane Maria was devastating. We wanted to recover and rebuild. After that, we were struck hard by earthquakes, the pandemic, and most recently by Hurricane Fiona. We have not been able to fully recover. Hurricane Maria was terrible. We lost everything, and some people even lost family members. Mine was one of the families that had to seek refuge in the mainland with the purpose of bringing stability to our families. But something told me that I had to come back to Puerto Rico. And it was then that the Centro Sorisolina Ferre gave me the opportunity to become part of this amazing team. I have learned a lot during these years. There is no doubt we are a resilient and hardworking people. When one looks at our communities from the standpoint of privilege, it all sounds like an exaggeration. But when you dive deeper into them, you realize that the problems are much greater than one thinks. But as Sister said, serving is our way of talking. And that is how we will continue to do what we do every day until we lift up our communities and our island of Puerto Rico. I want to thank President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden for their visit. I am also grateful for the support and assistance that they have provided so far. I hope they are able to understand our most basic needs. And I am deeply honored today to be able to introduce President Joe Biden.
Thank you. Well, my name's Joe Biden, and I don't want the headline to read, Biden brings storm to Puerto Rico. So I'm going to maybe have to cut this a little short. Let me start off by saying that Jill and I, and thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Jill and I we're anxious to be here. You know, I come from the little state of Delaware. It's not like the Congresswoman from New York. She's from the big state. But we have a very, in relative terms, large Puerto Rican population in Delaware, relative to our population. We have the 8th largest black population in the country, and between all minorities, we have 20% of our state is minority. And so I was sort of raised in the Puerto Rican community at home politically. And so we came here for a long time, both for business and pleasure, since you're part of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and Delaware is as well, and I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I spent a lot of time in the northern part of the state. But look, it's people like you who do so much for your community and are going to make such a big difference as Puerto Rico rebuilds. Thank you, Governor, for your partnership as we work together to help rebuild Puerto Rico. And I mean rebuild it all, and rebuild it in a resilient way. So you don't, when storms come again, which they will, they're not having the damage they caused before. And I want to thank the members of Congress and local officials, community leaders who have joined us today. Ever since the hurricane struck, Jill and I have had people in Puerto Rico on our minds and in our prayers. We came here in person to show that we're with you. All of America is with you as you receive and recover and rebuild. I'm confident we're going to be able to do all you want, Governor, and I'm committed to this island. Puerto Rico has been through so much in recent years. Hurricane Maria 5 years ago, a 6.4 magnitude earthquake 2 years ago. The folks slept outside for days, worried about their homes would collapse on them if they went in. Then COVID-19, and then Fiona. And yes, Puerto Rico is a strong place, and Puerto Ricans are strong people. But even so, you have had to bear so much and more than need be, and you haven't gotten the help in a timely way. And this latest storm dealt a serious blow to all the hard work that have been done since Maria. Roads and bridges built after Maria have been washed away again. Families who spent their savings to build new homes after losing their last ones have seen them flooded away. Crops decimated, farms destroyed. Here in Ponce and communities nearby have been hit the hardest. And in for days, people live without power, without water, some still in that circumstance. No idea when to be back again. And for everyone who survived Maria Fiona must have been an all too familiar nightmare. You know better than anyone that over time, these losses add up. And so Puerto Ricans have lost loved ones in this storm and in the perilous disasters. And the number can feel abstract sometimes when you hear a number, but every number is a person, every life lived. We read the obituaries and remembrances, and they all feel like people we knew. Doting grandparents, devoted parents, christened children, longtime neighbors, people who cared about their community and made a difference. And they will not be forgotten. And then through these disasters, so many people have been displaced from their homes, lost their jobs and savings, or suffered injuries, often unseen, but many times seen. Yet somehow, the people of Puerto Rico keep getting back up with resilience and determination. quite frankly, is pretty extraordinary when you look at it from afar. And you deserve every bit of help your country can give you. That's what I'm determined to do, and that's what I promise you. After Maria, Congress approved billions of dollars for Puerto Rico, much of it not having gotten here initially. We're going to make sure you get every single dollar promised. And I'm determined to help Puerto Rico build faster than in the past and stronger and better prepared for the future. And that's why I approved emergency declarations of Puerto Rico before the hurricane. Governor, remember my call on you before the hurricane made landfall to deliver immediate federal funding to shelter people and provide essential support. Just a few days later, I approved an expedited major disaster declaration. That means federal government will cover 100% of the cost to clear debris and carry out search and rescue and continue to shelter people. It also means homeowners, renters, business owners are eligible to apply for federal help to recover damaged losses caused by Hurricane Fiona. The federal government is going to provide individual assistance for up to $37,900 for essential home repairs and another $37,900 for lost property, as the law calls for, like a car or a refrigerator. Additionally, we've deployed more than 1,200 personnel from FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Coast Guard, the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency. They include search and rescue teams to assist survivors and power restoration experts. Power is now back, as you pointed out, Governor, at 92% of the island, and water is back at 95% of the island, thanks in part to the dedicated IBEW workers and federal support staff. Now we have to get to 100%. And here at this facility, you can see some of the generators from FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers that were transporting to places that still don't have power. Here they're loaded onto trucks and brought to locations and hospitals and shelters, paired with fuel trucks so generators can be gassed up on site. My administration is also providing financial assistance to help families and individuals right away. Many families are scrambling to pay their bills right now to fill up their gas tank, to put food on the table. They can register at FEMA, cash assistance for $700 to help cover the essentials for just a little while. So far, nearly 200,000 households across Puerto Rico have received this cash assistance. $700 won't replace what you lost, not even close, but it can help take care of some of the little basics while you catch your breath and get back on your feet. And FEMA has made crisis counselors available when you're, whether you're a survivor or a first responder. If you need help or just someone to talk to, people are here for you. The hotline number is 800-981-0023. I'll say it again, 800-981-0023. Don't be embarrassed to call. Whether you're Spanish or English-speaking, counselors will be standing by to help you. And at times like these, Americans come together, and I'm grateful for our personnel of FEMA and other agencies for the hard work these past few weeks. Many of our FEMA staff, as been pointed out, are from Puerto Rico, are Puerto Rican. They've been working 24/7 to get help to people across the island, while also scrambling to help their own families and neighbors. I want to recognize the local first responders, including Puerto Rican National Guard, who have been working round the clock, and I mean it literally round the clock. They've been through a lot the past 5 years. I want to applaud the Red Cross volunteers who came from as far away as California, Louisiana, Minnesota, Texas, to help however they can. And New York sent not only a congresswoman in the Congress, but the state troopers and emergency responders. I don't think you're going to be staying the whole time, right? Anyway, all kidding aside, New Jersey sent their all-hazard incident management teams trained for hurricane responses. These states are home to two of the largest Puerto Rican populations in the United States, New York and New Jersey, and their sisters and brothers in Puerto Rico needed them, and they answered the call. Most of all, I want to recognize the heroism and selflessness of so many people across Puerto Rico. The main story that has been reported is the storm, but there's another story. What ordinary people did when the storm hit. Literally, the day after the hurricane, churches and community organizations opened a network of kitchens across the island to cook hot food for anyone who needed it. Folks delivered food to the elderly who were housebound. They started their generators, they shared their generation with neighbors who had medicine that needed to be refrigerated. They organized activities for kids to give their exhausted parents a break. They arranged canvases to bring food, water, and other supplies and commodities to communities cut short as a consequence of landslide and flooding that couldn't be reached. And during the storm, when the waters were rising, people went to extraordinary lengths to help each other survive. We've seen people using a raft and a boat tied to a rope to brave the raging waters and rescue neighbors trapped in their homes. You know, they aren't paratroopers or search and rescue professionals, they're neighbors. They're just regular folks ready and willing to do whatever they could do when their help was needed, when the neighbor was in trouble. And thanks to them, all the people of Puerto Rico, this recovery from Fiona is underway. I'm encouraged by all the stories that are opening up, the hospitals that have kept running, the supply chains that held steady, and the debris has already begun to be cleared on roads across the island, and we will continue the debris coverage. Still, we have to do more. We have to ensure that when the next hurricane strikes, Puerto Rico is ready. Today, I'm announcing more than $60 million in funding to help coastal areas in Puerto Rico become better prepared for the storm. For example, we can create a flood warning system to help shore up levees and flood walls. In addition, there's nearly $700 million in infrastructure investments in Puerto Rico that have already been announced since I signed the bipartisan infrastructure law last November. For example, we've awarded $90 million to upgrade PR2 highway, and we've announced $163 million to begin construction on a canal to restore help me with the pronunciation. Martin Peña, that entire ecosystem. And we're going to clean up polluted waters and restore mitigation mangrove habitats, and bring back marine life. And you're going to see investments like these increasing significantly in the months ahead. We're investing in Puerto Rico's roads, bridges, public transit, ports, airports, water safety, and high-speed internet. We know that the climate crisis and more extreme weather are going to continue to hit this island and hit the United States overall. And as we rebuild, we have to ensure that we build it to last. We're particularly focused on the power grid. This year, to date, Puerto Rico has received $4 million to help make the power grid more resilient. That number is going to go up. As we conveyed to the governor, I'm ready to deploy and expedite more resources from the Department of Energy and other federal agencies, I don't usually talk this fast, but it looks like it's moving quickly. To help transform the entire system so the Puerto Rican people can get clean, reliable, affordable power they need, and the power stays in homes and hospitals when storms like Fiona strike. That includes mini grids, which you can begin to deploy soon so we are less dependent on transmission lines across the long distances, and more redundancy when the storms hit. The goal is lower energy bills and more reliable power for Puerto Rican households. Additionally, I've asked the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, who is a first-rate person, to lead a supercharged effort across the entire federal government. She's going to put in place the Puerto Rican Grid Recovery Modernization Team to bring to bear all the federal resources and technical assistance and additional support for Puerto Rico. And we'll help as you work to repair your grid quickly and drive decisive progress on the game plan for Puerto Rico's clean energy transformation. You know, I also know many people in Puerto Rico have many family friends and friends in Florida. Your hearts are with them right now, and their hearts are with you. Jill and I will be in Florida on Wednesday. And as I've made clear, at times like these, our nation comes together, put aside our political differences, and get to work. We show up when we're needed. Because if we lost our home, if we lost a loved one, we'd hope that people would show up for us as well. And I want the people of Puerto Rico to know I'm committed, to my entire administration is committed, to standing with you every step of the way, as long as it takes. And the White House reception honoring Hispanic History Month, a U.S. Army chaplain, a Catholic priest, proud son of Puerto Rico, offered a prayer for all those who suffered through the hurricane, including Puerto Rico. Here's what he said. He said, "Give us generous hearts that we may continue to use our gifts to support them." Well, the people of Puerto Rico have generous hearts. And that's what they get through this weird return of generosity. And that's the generous hearts that the rest of the country are going to make sure we continue to provide. But I want to say it again. We are not leaving here as long as I'm president until everything, I mean this sincerely, until every single thing that we can do is done. God bless you all, and and all of you who are hurting. And may God protect our troops and all those brave souls that risk their lives to help others survive this tragedy. And I usually don't quite talk this fast, but it looks like we made it. Thank you very much. I want to bring up the, do you mind go? I was up in New York with the mayor and with the governor. And what they wanted to talk to me about, they wanted to talk to me about Puerto Rico. No, remember? We sat there?
Yes. Yes.
And so it is one of the best congresswomen and the congresspersons in the entire Congress. And she's, were you born here?
Yes, I was born here. And my family, my entire family is here.
It's here? All right, I hope I don't get you in trouble with my
9 brothers and sisters.
9 brothers and sisters. Well, God bless you. I tell you what, my mother used to think that anybody who had that many children, we only had 4, she'd say, no purgatory for mom, straight to heaven.
Thank you.
Straight to heaven.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We love you.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to get this done. We really are.
There you have it. As long as it takes, it's a promise that President Biden has continued repeating about Puerto Rico. We were hearing the president's statements about how he is there to support Puerto Ricans in the wake of Hurricane Fiona and announced new funding from the newly passed infrastructure law. The president says he's committed and vowed to shore up its struggling infrastructure. He said he will make sure Puerto Rico gets every single dollar promised. He talked about new funding that has been announced today to reform the infrastructure, and not just that, but to build resiliency. It's a word that for every Puerto Rican has become quite controversial. And with that, I want to bring in CBS News' Cristina Corujo, one of our producers and digital journalists in D.C. Cristina, I know that you were just in Puerto Rico until yesterday through Hurricane Fiona, and I wanted to invite you to have a discussion about, President Biden has committed more than $60 million in federal funds to Puerto Rico. I think it's important to note, where this funding is coming from. And just from this talk that we just heard from the president and from our Puerto Rican governor, Pedro Pierluisi, did any of this funding surprise you? Is there anything that we didn't know before? And what do you hope it'll all achieve?
So, Lilia, what I can tell you is that obviously this funding is part of that recovery process that is ongoing right now. But to be honest, and this is something that we did hear from the FEMA administrator while they were traveling to Puerto Rico, that FEMA is still making the assessments on the ground of the damages. So the final number of the amount of damages that happened due to Fiona is still a question mark. We have to wait for that number to then know how much funds are we going to get, or how much funds are Puerto Ricans are going to get because of this emergency. So definitely the big question mark is that, because yes, the $60 million will be for creating a new flooding system warning due to the amount of water that, Puerto Rico saw due to Fiona. But there is a bigger question here, and it's how will they be able to get more money to be able to rebuild in a way that is stronger and is just not rebuilding in patches.
One of the things I think that people always ask me is how come it took so long? How come it has taken so long? And I know that you've been doing reporting on where have the Maria funds gone to, why it's so hard to disperse these funds in a way that Puerto Rico would already be able to really recover the power grid and the power infrastructure. Can you just walk me through first of all, where the recovery efforts stand now? We hear the governor saying 93% of people have power, but you and I both know that a lot of our friends, family members, and perhaps you endured that when you were in Puerto Rico this entire last couple of weeks, that power comes and goes. So that's a tricky number. Where do we stand? And, why is it that 5 years later, things were so brittle, if you will.
Yeah, Lilia, definitely. I think the main issue here is that it's been 5 years and Puerto Ricans are still facing power outages, even before Fiona. So this is a struggle that they've been facing even before Maria. So we're talking about an electric system that has been having issues for decades now. So obviously when they got hit by Maria, then they got hit by the earthquakes, and now Fiona is just, a moment of what people call a perfect storm. Now, regarding the amount of money that has been allocated, we've heard that, $9.5 billion have been allocated to rebuild the electric grid. But from those $9.5 billion, only about $1.6 billion have been dispersed. And this is the big issue here. And what we've heard from local officials and Congress members is that this process has been really, really slow. And I've even been told by sources that this process is very bureaucratic, and that has made the process even worse and even slower, then leading to what Puerto Rico has now, a very unstable grid.
And I think the biggest source of frustration, right, is that the power system was privatized, that Luma Energy took over. And since Luma took over, the outages have only worsened. And so what can people expect is a big question. Despite all of the money that the president is announcing, that the governor is receiving, that we are hearing the president's praise for Congresswoman Nidia Velázquez, and the priorities that exist among these Puerto Rican representatives in Congress who do not represent the island because we don't have a voting representative. The president talked about generosity, returning generosity, and this is one thing that to me is really interesting, because there's this notion that the federal government is helping Puerto Ricans, that Puerto Rico, as the president said, deserves every bit of help your country, meaning the U.S., can provide. But the reality is that Puerto Ricans don't hold power over their own fate so long as they remain in the island. The fact that Puerto Ricans don't, vote for the officials and the representatives in Congress, but also, that's not to say that, as a lot of people would think, that Puerto Ricans would necessarily want to become a state. So let's talk about, the way that Puerto Ricans have felt marginalized and that level of responsibility that Congress has, not just in helping Puerto Rico, but in creating the conditions for Puerto Rico to have these inequitable conditions. Can you just talk to me a little bit about, what both of us have been reporting on, and something that, taking advantage that both you and I grew up there, what people don't understand about the conditions that Puerto Rico faces that are the responsibility of Congress?
Yeah, Lilia, I think you nailed it. One of the main issues here is that obviously because Puerto Ricans have no way of demonstrating or being able to cast a ballot, there's no way that they can actually, vote unless they move to one of the 50 states. And, that's also an issue because they felt marginalized, because sometimes these visits could be seen as political stunts, and I've even heard,
not to mention the props that were used today with those wire coils, and last time it was the paper towel rolls.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it's used as a political stunt, and I think right now the Puerto Rican people are frustrated because of that. Because obviously there's a midterm election coming, and there is a lot of political narrative
now we
happening.
become popular.
Exactly. So it's a frustration among Puerto Ricans that sometimes they are used as a political stunt.
Well, Cristina Corujo, thank you so much for your insights, and thank you for continuing to cover Puerto Rico to understand more about, all of these issues and the conditions that have been created, pretty much by Congress and over the years and over the history of Puerto Rico. I would love to push you to watch our streaming documentary, Fighting for Paradise, The Future of Puerto Rico. We're going to take a quick break, but we have a lot more news ahead. You're streaming CBS News, always on.
You ready?